Hello, and welcome to The Alt Left.
Welcome back, everyone, to The Alt Left. This is episode 73. We've got a juicy one for you. I am always your host, Chris. With me is the good Reverend Dr. K.
Good evening, everyone.
Matthew Jumbo Johnson.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back.
And a special guest, a guy named Justin.
Yes, what's going on? Thanks, guys.
Yeah, we saw this guy hanging outside. Like, he was just sitting there wearing some weird shirts that said like ACAB and crap. And we're like, hey, why don't you come talk to us, dude? And we got some audience members that might like to hear your story.
So Justin is an avid Twitterer. He is also the host and owner of the Price of Avocado Toast podcast. And so if you're looking for some good millennial financial advice from someone who has fucked up and done good stuff, check out at Price of Avocado Toast on Instagram. You can find him on Twitter. And of course, we'll have plugs and links for him from at the end. But most importantly, Justin used to be a cop.
Yeah. I mean, like,
and I hate to say one of the good ones, but
special shout. Let's just do it in the beginning. Shout out to our boy Stauffy, because Stauffy tagged us in a Twitter string from Justin, which was, and we'll let him tell the full story, but it's basically the story of how he went to become a cop, did it, and was like, I can't fucking do this. I have a conscience. And decided to quit and become a teacher. And he did it for all the right reasons. So,
And so Stauffy tagged us in it. And I literally shot a message. I'm like, dude, you got to come on this show. And he was like, okay. And I was like, I was way too easy. Like, so Justin either works for the FBI or he's just a good dude. I'll let you know in about an hour. But or there's a sudden knocking in 20 minutes. I'm just kidding. I'm already on the list. But Justin, tell us about you, because again, I know your story starts with just a guy in a small town who was just trying to help people and do all the right things. Like, where does it take off from there?
Yeah, well, first, let me say thank you to you guys for having me on. I was not expecting the Twitter thread to explode as it did. I thought I was just kind of like tweeting into the void, and it kind of exploded. I've been on Twitter for like 5 years since I left policing in 2017, and I haven't really ever shared the story. So I was like, fuck it, I'll do it after the week we've had, and it exploded. So I'm glad it led me to your guys' podcast. My story was that I was in college and was pursuing a bachelor's degree in criminology. I thought I wanted to go into juvenile probation work, and I was an intern at the juvenile probation department in the county I was living in for about 3 years. And I was really invested and like super thought I was gonna be able to make a difference. And I have a friend who was like, hey, you'd actually be really good in law enforcement. And being in a criminology program, there are a lot of folks in there who wanted to be cops and a lot of educators who were former cops. And I was like, okay, cool. I think I should do that. So I graduated and took all the tests and whatnot and applied for a department to put me through the academy. And after a couple, months of backgrounds and polygraph exam and all of that fun stuff, I got into the academy. It started April 10th of 2017 and went through the 5-month academy. So 800 hours stretched out over about 20 weeks. The last week is kind of like your wrap up of scenarios and not a ton, more of the pomp and circumstance type stuff. So really like 19 weeks of learning and then the 1 week of, celebratory stuff. And then graduated, had the weekend and got into the department. And after about 10 days, I decided this fucking sucks and I don't want to become this. So I left. And there's obviously a ton of, incidents throughout the academy and through even just those 10 days that have been wildly eye-opening. And if you guys want, I can just run them down straight from the start.
Well, it's kind of, let's take it a piece at a time, because like I want to hear about academy. I also want to hear about your 10 days as a new guy, and then I really want to hear the story of how the resignation went down.
Yeah, that's what I'm really curious about. Is like, how did that happen?
Yeah, so with the academy, obviously you show up and you're like, fuck yeah, gun, badge, I'm going to save babies out of burning trees. It's going to be dope. I'm going to do it. Fuck yeah, I'm going to be a big hero. And then, like, what was the first time where you were like, the first thing that kind of like rang an alarm bell?
This is going to be really funny, you guys. The first red flag was actually day one. And it's not a huge,
shit.
not a huge red flag, but I realized, yeah, right. I realized, that's kind of weird. So we all show up day one of the academy, and actually, even before that, during the interview process, in an interview with a commander and a sergeant, they're asking like the standard 7 questions they give to every recruit that's going through the process. And one of the questions was like, you show up on a bar scene and a guy is trying to fight you. What are you going to do? And I remember thinking in my head, like, what's the answer that they want to hear? And you're so like stuck in that mode of like, I'm going to do whatever it takes. And they're like, okay, what about if he has a knife? And I remember saying to them, like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to go home safely. And they were like, that's not a good enough answer. What are you going to do if somebody's coming at you with a knife? And I was essentially said, like, I'm going to shoot him. And I remember like going home and being like, fuck, that feels super gross. Like that doesn't feel very good. Even though I get the danger inherent in somebody attacking you with a knife, it didn't feel good coming out of my mouth. So that was probably the first thing. But day one of the academy, the director of the academy says, hey, new recruits, good morning. Hope y'all are doing good. And I was the only one who was like, good morning. And he was like, I like you. You're smiling already. And I was kind of like, oh, okay. About 5 minutes later, he's talking to us a little longer and he goes, by the way, does anybody know my name? And me, being a fucking, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed recruit, I raise my hand and I say his first name out loud. I'm like, yeah, your name is this. I've read it in all the packets I've gotten. And all of the like recruit training officers just start howling laughter. And the director's like, actually, that's not my name. My name is Director so-and-so. And he was like, don't ever call me that again. So I was kind of like, oh, okay. Like this is very like pseudo department. Like they
like
want you to
paramilitary.
Immediately. That's a great way to put it. And so that was probably like the first thing of like, oh, we're not in Kansas anymore, Toto. Like this is intense. And then there was just times throughout the academy that really struck me as moments where I was super questioning it. I'll tell you guys the big one. We have scenarios that you have to complete for California's training. And there's about, I think, 10 of them. And one of them is an ethics test. And so they tell you that from the jump, like, hey, you're going to have an ethics test. And so you're always thinking, when's the ethics test coming? When's the ethics test coming?
How does anybody pass it in this world?
Yeah, right. Yeah. And so I get on scenario night called out to a scenario where I have to make a DUI stop. And the woman that's portraying the driver is an older woman, and I handcuff her and put her in the back of the cop car I'm driving. And the facilitator says, okay, you can get her out now. And I said, oh, like I want to go clear her car for, booze or any evidence or anything. He goes, no, get her out of the car. And I was like, well, I'm just going to go up and do the rest of the scenario. And he looks at me and he's like, I'm telling you, kid, get her out of the car. And so I'm like, oh, okay, this is kind of weird. And so I open the door to get her out, and he calls our scenario director over and says, this kid wasn't listening to me. He's doing all this stuff. He wouldn't get this old woman out of the car. And the scenario director comes over and he goes, hey, what's going on? And I said, oh, I thought I had to go clear the car for evidence. So I didn't want to get her out of the car before I was done with that. I thought we were still in the scenario, thinking that it was like an ethics thing. Like they were going to say, hey, you just don't have to let her get the DUI. And so I explained that. I was like, I thought this might've been the ethics test. So I just kept her in there. And he goes, oh, no, this one isn't your ethics test. So I said, oh, okay, cool. My bad. And we're driving back to the staging area. And the facilitator is like, if you act like that again, you're not going to make it in this profession. And I was like, oh, that feels kind of gross. But, I did the good boy, like, yes, sir. And I go and I'm in the staging room and I get called to the next call. And it's a felony traffic stop. So it's going to be me leading the vehicle with 2 other vehicles riding with me. And we go through the stop, and I have this officer next to me. And I will never forget this guy's name. I don't have a problem saying his name. His name's Officer Mann. I hope nothing but
of
bad
course
luck
it
for
is.
that
Hold
guy.
on.
Yeah.
Hold on. Of course his name
Man.
is Officer Mann.
Yeah.
Let's just be clear. Like that, there was not going to ever be a scenario where that wasn't his fucking name.
All right, so tell me what you and the man did.
Yeah, me and the man. So we're driving to the scenario. We stop and we do the whole felony car stop thing. Driver, get out, hands up, all this goofy shit. And I send the 2 others up to go clear the vehicle, and there was somebody hiding in the back seat. in this scenario, you're supposed to like call them out a bunch. And then after a while, you can send the 2 up. So after about 2 minutes, I sent them up and somebody's in the back seat. So they come back to the vehicle. I do the whole passenger, I know you're in there. You need to come back. Passenger gets out and starts walking back. And Officer Man turns to me and says again, hey, we're done. And I was like, oh, no, I want to get him all the way back here. We're going to cuff him and put him in the car. And I'm on the driver's side door with my cute little blue gun pointed at the vehicle. And he's next to me. And he's like, no, we're done. Or he didn't even say done. He said something like, you're finished. And I was like, I want to wait till he gets back. And he like grabs the gun and like looks at me and starts like shaking my hands and like gets inches from my face. And he's like, you're fucking done. You're like laser focused. I can't remember exactly what he said. I was like, holy shit. He's like inches from my face. He's like, you're laser focused. You're fucking done. And I was like, whoa, can we get director so-and-so over? And it was it was the director coming over again, scenario director. Mm-hmm. And I explained what happened. And the scenario director goes, do you have diabetes or something? Like, did you not eat sugar? Is everything okay? And I'm like, yeah, like I'm totally fine. I thought, again, this was the ethics scenario. And so I don't know how we're supposed to finish these scenarios. And the director's like, okay, well, just listen to the people that are there with you. And I'm like, I'm just trying to like survive the academy, dude. I have no clue what's going on. So we get back in the vehicle. The officer's super mad at me. He's like, I don't want to fucking talk to you. And we get back to the staging area. And that's when he said, he was like, you're not, it was a different guy at this time, but he said the same thing. He's like, you're not going to make it in this profession if you don't listen to people when they're talking to you. And I was like, oh, like, okay. That night I finished up scenarios. I called my commander at the department the next day and like explained everything that happened. And eventually I didn't have to redo any of those scenarios, but they just didn't have those 2 scenario facilitators with me again. Actually, they had one of them with me again, which I was surprised about. And he failed me the next time I had a scenario. And that's the one that I wrote about that I had to do again, the domestic violence one. But that was like the first moment of like, oh, fuck, like I do not want to be like these guys. And that was about 10 weeks in. Or no, that might have been a little bit, maybe like 12 weeks in, I think his first scenario day. So that was like the first moment, really.
So what was the deal? Did you like mess up and they were just saying, okay, you messed up, you're done? Or like this is where I'm confused. Like, I'm with you. Like, what the fuck is going on? Like, all of a sudden, did you just, like, did you hit your finger on the trigger? Did you step wrong? Like, what was the deal?
Yeah, this sounds super confusing. Like, I can't figure out where you misstepped either.
Yeah, no, I didn't misstep. They just wanted to end the scenario. They just didn't want to wait out there anymore. Because it was hot, I guess.
Oh, so they just wanted to move on. And the fact that you were still doing your job, they were like, fuck you for making us stay out here 5 more seconds. Got it.
Yeah. And
so wait a minute. All they could have done, all they had to do was be like, okay, that's the end of the scenario. Let's finish up.
Yes. Yeah.
Like,
and so
like
they
literally
did that.
Oh, man. Tell me you've never been arrested without telling me you've never been arrested before, Matt. you have clearly never been on the wrong end of a cop before. If that's like, dude, you have no idea. Like what Justin's talking about is exactly what it feels like to be someone who's been arrested, because like
it's a universal attitude.
You are barked something and you do not get a chance to ask what that means. And if you don't understand it, it does not matter. You are barked a sentence. And if you didn't comprehend what he said, misunderstood something, don't speak the language, like whatever, the next step is violence.
Yeah.
I'm a middle-class straight white male. Yes, I've never had an interaction with cops before.
So am I, but I've been arrested 4 times.
Yeah, but you're also a filthy commie and nobody likes you.
Fair. But yeah, like that's a good red flag. And again, I think that's kind of telling of no wonder you fucking left. Like, because that kind of mentality of like, I will bark to what I am told. And if I am not understanding something that is said to me strangely that I'm not expecting to hear, and I can't comply with something I don't understand, and being met with anger at that is confusing, that makes you not a cop. Because like that is kind of that mentality, is I will issue an order, and if you don't understand it, that sucks to be you. You're going to have less teeth.
Yeah, and they eventually ended up changing the language to where all the facilitators just had to now say like, okay, scenario over. So recruits knew like, oh, okay, because the ethics test was at the next scenario, and it is like wildly obvious. Like there's a sergeant who's like, I'm gonna beat the shit out of this drunk chick, and you're like, okay, like I'll finish the call, champ. Like so the ethics test is like very obvious. But yeah, they ended up changing it to
they changed the language because of your interactions.
Yes, I forever have changed it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, I
Fucking
mean,
A.
I don't know. Maybe something good came out of it, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. Who knows for the next human being that's like, I just want to do good.
Yeah, they're becoming a cop. No, they don't.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of good people who, I don't believe that everyone who joins the police is there for the wrong reason. I believe a majority of people who join the police force are there for the wrong reason. Justin, I'm sure you can attest to this. Like, there is a demographic of like washed up football guy from high school who was a solid C or D student who literally has nothing else going for him. And it's like, oh, this could be a career that buys me a house. And, my daddy didn't love me enough. I guess I'll go beat some people up who are a different color than me. Like, that is definitely a large demographic, but I don't believe it's everyone. And I believe, like, for every 10 fucking chodes, there's a Justin out there. I think for me personally, and again, like, I'm curious to hear what Justin feels about this, but like, I tend to think that one of the reasons we have so many chuds in the PDs is because not only is it a majority of people who join are chuds, but then like, well, once you're thrown into a fucking giant bowl of guacamole, everything tastes like guacamole. It's like at a certain point, it's like conform or die. I mean, is that your read on that? Like, is that how you felt?
Yeah, 1000%. And I still have guys. I have one in particular that I still talk to from the academy who's still in law enforcement, and I worry about him daily because he was just like me going in, and I don't get to talk to him much about it, and I only get to see him, maybe once a month or once every few months. But I've heard conversations that his wife has had with my wife, and I think like, oh damn, like this may not be going down the right path, and that's worrisome. I do worry about that, but I think that you're right that the majority of them are guys who have some type of complex and some type of feelings, and they are entranced by that like opportunity, and it's
And
scary.
like, if you feel powerless and kind of shitty and small in your life, like regardless of where that comes from, like it doesn't matter if that comes from like a poverty background, a parental issue background, like just your third grade teacher was a piece of shit and beat the crap out of you every day, like whatever it is, like whatever has made you feel out of control and insecure, like yeah, there's got to be a huge allure of like, here's a gun and a badge, and you get to decide who goes home tomorrow. Like,
Yeah,
there's got to be a rush to that really appeals to someone who feels out of control in their own life.
yeah. And I mean, I don't want to like toot my own horn or anything, but I had a relatively like good school experience. I had a relatively decent upbringing. I have a twin brother, so nobody ever picked on me because there was two of us. Like, we got along with everybody. Like, I didn't have all of those like shitty feelings. So I truly was like, I'm just kind of a square, and I want to go into policing to like help people out if I can. But yeah, that's not the feeling for most. It's funny you mentioned football players, because I remember the guy who did like the best in our academy. Fitness wise, he was like a former like all state like running back, and he's like doing pull-ups, like bragging that he's like the school rushing record holder and stuff, and you're like, oh, that tracks, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, like
it's like, I know why you're here.
Yeah,
like seriously, like Al Bundy should have been a cop, not a shoe salesman. Like that kind of feels like.
Yep.
All right, so let's fast forward. So is that the most like eye-opening part of the academy, or was there anything else that like really like was a light bulb?
There were other times in the academy that were definitely a light bulb. We had instructors that said things about different calls they went to and the responses to those, and some of the ways they would brag about stuff. You guys saw in my thread talking about the milk crate. That same scenario director was a chief of police that was retiring that year. They actually celebrated him at our graduation for retiring, and he bragged about how having a milk crate can be a misdemeanor, because back in the day, milkmen had these milk crates and people would take them, and eventually it became a crime. And so he would brag about how he could stop transients because they would usually have a milk crate on them. And then he had probable cause to stop them for that crime, and then could kind of do research for more. And I remember hearing that and being like, a fucking milk crate, man. Like, I remember, my elementary school had milk crates to carry stuff. Like, what are we doing? Is that really what we think is like the best thing to be doing here? And then there's the obvious other stuff, the scenarios where you're clearing a home and there's, people jacked up to pull out their fake blue guns, or the shooting range and guys getting all excited to live fire and stuff and brag about how great of shooters they were. And I had never shot guns before that, and I actually really liked that part of the academy. Like, shooting somebody else's ammunition that you didn't have to spend money on was really cool. for 4 hours a day. Like it was pretty rad.
Shooting guns is fun, man.
Yeah,
it really
especially when
is.
it's somebody else's ammo.
Yeah.
That sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Last time we went shooting, I shot Chris's AK. And he paid for the ammo himself. It was awesome. Thank you, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice. But I remember, like thinking to myself, like, there's a very clear reasoning why guys are celebrating this. And it's not because they're like, oh, I'm a really good target shooter. This is a really fun hobby for me when I go camping or hunting or something like that. It just felt dirty. And it wasn't something that I was okay with. Say again?
Guns give people a feeling of power. And if you have felt powerless your entire life and downtrodden and hated and unpopular and all of those things, or that mommy and daddy didn't love you enough, to hold a gun and have that power in your hand is alluring as hell to people like that.
Me and my very mediocre penis said that.
But it goes way past the enjoyment of shooting, and it's the feeling that you get physically holding it in your hand.
Yes.
Like it's a very different thing. And I understand exactly what you're talking about, because I've heard that a lot, that, they get all jacked up about like just going to the range. It's like, oh yeah, we get to go shoot. It's like a reward almost.
It's different strokes for different folks too, because like, there's people who pick up guns and have insane anxiety and all of that. And
absolutely.
I think like kind of to your point there is like, yeah, like it totally makes sense that like it would attract the crowd of, man, I can't wait to blow the melon out of someone.
Yeah. 1000%.
It's that weird tropey thing where you're like
Absolutely.
Burt Gummer from Graboids, like gung ho. Like anytime you get around a gun, you just start sporting wood. It's like you can tell the difference, like between people that are hobbyists or just enjoy shooting like targets or hunting or all that stuff. The way they talk about guns versus the people that literally are itching to shoot someone. It's different. Even if they use the exact same words, you can tell like there's a gleam in their eye when those people are getting excited. Yeah, very much so.
All right, so you get out of the academy, spit shined, and ready to rock and roll. Now, at this point, how are you feeling? Because like again, you haven't resigned, so clearly, like you're still thinking. Like I'm assuming, like clearly you weren't like thinking I'm out by this point. You were kind of like, I didn't like those guys, but whatever, because now you're about to be your own man, kind of thing. Like,
gonna give it the old college try.
Yeah. So how were you feeling in that weird limbo period of graduating the academy and starting your first day? Like that in between period, like where were you at mentally?
That's exactly how I was feeling. I graduated the academy and I won an award. It was called the Four-Way like Rotarian Award, and it was basically an ethics and moral award that I got voted on by my other recruits. And essentially, I remember once I got the award, I was like, oh, that's that thing we did where we had to like write somebody down that exemplified like these 4 categories. And I remember thinking back and being like, oh yeah, this is like the nice guy award, like the good guy award. And getting that on the day of the academy, I had no clue it was coming. Like the chief of the department that I was going to go work for was there, like, bars and stars all done up to present it to me and stuff and brag on me. And I was like, oh shit, like, I actually can do this. Like this is going to be okay because I'm being applauded for my ethics. I'm being applauded for being a good guy. So it must mean that there's something inherently okay about me. And it gave me kind of that like kick in the pants to be like, I'm going to give it the college try. Get into the department, get away from the stress of the academy and the guys that were there that weren't going to be in the department I was in, because we had training officers from all different types of departments, and it felt like I'm going to give this a shot. I mean, I remember the stress of the academy. There was one night I got home and I had to shine my boots, and I wasn't engaged here yet, but I was living with my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, but she was like came in to bother me in the bathroom like 10 minutes after I got home, and she's like, have you shined your boots yet? And I remember turning to her and being like, does it look like I've fucking shined my boots yet? I just got home. And she like stared at me and walked away. And I remember saying that and pausing and being like, what did I just say? Who is that guy? And I went and like sat on the bed, and like I remember looking up at her and being like, I am so remarkably sorry that that's the way I spoke to you. Like I I could feel the stress of the academy. And so finally having the academy done, it felt like, oh, this is just all academy stress. This is just all the nervousness of like, don't fail, don't get kicked out. Because I was getting paid to go through. This was my job. This is how I was supporting my household other than my wife's work. So I'm thinking like, just pass. Don't fail. And so once you have that stress gone, you're like, oh, we're money. Like I'm good now. I can just go in and pass, FTO programs and we're set. And I'm going to retire out in 30 years. And so, yeah, I took that weekend to kind of be like, all right, it's time to rock and roll. Like we're Cowboys from here on out.
When did shit go downhill? Was it day one, or was it like, no, the first couple of days everyone was like patting me on the ass and telling me I was a good boy, but like day 5 is when shit got real, or like...
Yeah, I'll go through the 10 days step by step because it was
all right. Let's do it, man.
Here we go.
I graduated August 25th. 26th and 27th is the weekend. August 28th, we get sworn in Monday morning. First thing in the morning, get sworn in, and then we immediately.
Real quick, to interrupt you. What year was this? Is this like
20?
Again, did you have your details so clear? Like,
yeah, 2017, baby. There's our academy photo. You can see I'm the
so
only
it was
motherfucker
not long
smiling.
ago.
No. I'm the only one smiling, man. Yeah.
So 2017. So yeah, this is only a couple of years ago.
Yeah. August 28th, we get sworn in, and then we go into defensive tactics. And so that's going to be going through all of the risk controls and handcuffing and fighting and all that stuff you're going to have to do. And we're going through it, and I'm like, oh, yeah, this is the stuff we did in the academy. And we do like some pretty intense physical stuff. Like at one point, one of the biggest sergeants in the department, he was probably 6'4", 270. He basically just puts you on the ground, lays on top of you, and is like, you have a minute to get up and fight your way out of this. And immediately afterwards, like I ran to a sink and barfed because I was like, you're fighting for a minute straight.
Mm-hmm.
And it was intense. We had to do that in the academy too. We had we had a girl like to have some spinal injury from it. It was freaking bananas. It was called sustained resistance. So if there's any ex-cops listening, they'll be like, oh yeah, I remember that shit. That fucking sucked. But day one, we go through that defensive tactics, and the first thing that caught me off guard was a sergeant who was one of our training officers at the academy, who was pretty chill there. He is telling us any action needs to have a violent reaction. If they're going to do something, we're going to do something. And I remember hearing that and being like, holy shit, that's a very real thought of when somebody's like, if they're going to swing on you, the taser's coming out. If they've got a knife, the gun's coming out. And you can justify it using legal code that's been, challenged all the way to the Supreme Court. And so I remember hearing that and being like, oh shit, this is intense. And then another sergeant comes in, and he's not even training us that day. And he goes and tells us, I live in this town with my wife and my kids. And if anything happens to my wife and kids because you fail to act, I will fucking kill you. And I was like looking at him like, okay, like I'm a father now. I get the sentiment, but like that's a pretty heavy thing to say to recruits day one.
I mean, no matter what the job, that's something fucked up to say to an employee.
Yeah.
If you fuck up at your job and it costs me, I'm going to murder you.
Yeah,
well,
it was
and more
bananas.
than that though, like again on this show, like we don't have any illusions about this, but generally speaking, I do believe the public perception of police officers is that they are there to de-escalate a situation. Now, obviously, especially in the last few years, I think that perception is changing. But
massively.
Like this, I think illustrates a point. Like from day one, you get out of, even in the academy, like you aren't trained to de-escalate. You're trained to escalate because somebody raising their hand to blow their nose might be somebody going to grab a gun to shoot you. So you got to have that gun out first and shoot them. And it's just like, fuck. Like it blows me away that it's just so from the beginning, it's ingrained that you're trained to escalate.
I mean, the thing is, like, no amount of racism or he's a bad guy or any of that can account for things like Tamir Rice. Like, that is clearly like, a child holding a toy gun is literally shot as the words finish leaving the cop's mouth of freeze and put your hands up. Like, the kid literally did not have time to react and he was shot. And that doesn't come from like, well, that guy was a jerk or he was a racist or he liked hurting babies. Like, no, like clearly this comes from training and this comes from being told from day one, like your life is the most important more than anyone else's and fuck everyone else. You're going to be covered legally. Do whatever the fuck it takes and you feel is right. And if you're scared, then who cares? People are going to die.
Yep. And
these are the things that you have to do to make it so that any action that you take will be seen as justified.
Yep,
That
we
to
had
me
scenarios
is
like
the
that.
key there. You
Yeah.
know, is here's how to get away with it.
Yeah, we had videos we'd watch in the academy where like they'd show us a video and then afterwards they'd say like, was that a good shoot? Was that clean? Can you justify that? And you'd have to argue it, and you're like, holy shit. Are you guys familiar with the Andy Lopez shooting?
No, what's that one?
He was a Latino kid who actually lived in the town that I was living in, and he was shot and killed. He had a plastic, toy gun, and he was outside of school walking at a park, and a sheriff's deputy rolled up on him, and same kind of story. I think within 13 seconds, shot and killed him, and it was huge news. It was, I think, geez, it's been a while now. It might even be close to like a decade almost. But it was
2013.
2013. Yeah, it was.
Yep.
Yeah, almost a decade. Yeah, it was huge news. And so in the academy, yeah, like you're taught. There was one training officer I remember who would like support de-escalation, who was like, that's right, you did that right. Most others were like, hey, if the scenario ramps up, we're ramping up, and we're going to find the way that is okay, and we're going to train you to understand why or why not. And so, yeah, day one in the department, it felt very much so like that. And now that sergeant who told that to us just pled guilty in federal court to making extrajudicial stops. He was in an unmarked
Recently
vehicle.
now?
Yeah, he was in an unmarked vehicle
Okay.
driving up 101 and was making stops outside of our jurisdiction and was confiscating drugs and money, him and another officer.
Nice.
And yeah, he eventually got let go because of that. Originally pled not guilty, then realized he was going to get it. And so he pled guilty recently on federal charges. So good for him, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's one
This
of
is
those.
the guy that threatened to kill you?
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, I would again. You talk about the Lopez killing. It's like that's just part. I mean, I'm in L.A., so I've got not only the LAPD, which likes murdering homeless people, but like we've
LA
got the
County
LA
Sheriff.
Sheriff's Department,
Yeah.
which is like right up there with like Chicago PD in terms of like the LA County Sheriff's Department is like a fucking criminal organized gang.
Yeah.
In fact,
Yeah.
we actually have a movement here of our sheriff won't show his arms because he actually has the LA Sheriff's Department gang tattoos, which you get from murdering people. And he won't show his arms. And there's actually this huge hashtag that's been going on for like 2 years to get him to actually roll up his sleeves. And he won't do it, which I'm sure at this point he's in the process of getting him lasered.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's part of the fucking murder gang in the sheriff's department, our sheriff. And like, again, I was at a protest last year where we were protesting the fucking Trump bridge that sails through the country, and it came through. And the LAPD, I helped patch together a homeless guy in a wheelchair, and the LAPD shot him in the face with a tear gas canister. He was sitting on the curb in a wheelchair.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And
man.
they shot
It's
him in the
so
fucking
gross.
face, and I was next to him, like, and we all got fucking gassed. Like, that's it is a militarized force out here. So it's like, I don't know, I guess maybe I'm just jaded. Like, and maybe that's a really good indication of like, oh, you only had one guy who just got murdered for no good fucking reason for being a kid with a gun. Like, I don't know. I guess it's like the school shooting thing. It's like, it's not even big news anymore. And it's like, how fucked up is that? That's like, we can't even track how many people are just getting executed.
No,
Yeah.
you become desensitized to it.
Yeah.
Because it happens so often, and at some point in time you feel like there is nothing that you can do to change it. And so in terms of people every day, like, it happens, you move the fuck on with your life. It's sad, but it happens. It hurts too much to dwell on it.
Mhm.
And so I can understand why we feel like, oh, one Hispanic kid gets shot and it's not a big deal. And not to say that it isn't a big deal, but that obviously what you're kind of getting at, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at. Like it's a real good like indication of the state of affairs that like, man, how sad is it that we're that desensitized that like something like this doesn't like anyone, an unarmed person,
so easily.
An unarmed person being murdered by law enforcement carelessness should send every neighborhood into the street, and it doesn't anymore. And again, that's just again kind of, and well, again, we talk about this, we're talking about white people noticing because us white people have noticed this has been a problem for like a decade. communities of color have known this for centuries. This isn't new to them at all, but it's just, again, it's a state of affair that, like, even the media can't even give a shit enough. The people whose job it is to sensationalize things can't even spend enough time to sensationalize this stuff because it's becoming so rampant with modern technology recording it.
Yeah.
So okay, so anyway, that was a tangent,
No,
but
I
like,
love
okay,
it.
so let's keep going.
Yeah.
So now you've been threatened with being murdered by your boss.
And it's
Yes.
the first day.
First day, and that was pretty cool. We had another guy in there as well, a sergeant, who eventually, it came out a couple years ago, he was embezzling from the Police Officers Association fund. So he was stealing from his friends. He's no longer a cop there either. So they had real winners
apparently.
introducing us day one. Yeah, it was really great. So that's day one. Go home, and I'm like, well, that sucked, but that it is what it is. And the next day, day two, this would be August 29th. We are going to the range. So we're going to drive about an hour away to go qualify shoot. So your academy score for shooting doesn't count. You got to go on the actual range with the department, firearms instructor, and qualify. And I was so blessed that I got to ride in the car with that guy. And he was a huge dick. And he told me that he thought they should have fired me after my scenario gaffe. Which I get it. Maybe I messed up that day, but I don't think I should have been fired. And then he also told me that he didn't trust me because I didn't listen to veterans, and that he would never want to work on a shift with me. And I'm sitting there thinking, dude, we're going to go qualify with our guns. Like, we get into any type of shit on the way there, and you and I might be in a firefight against somebody together, and you're sitting here telling me you don't trust me. Like, how fucking safe do I feel?
Not
so
at
that,
all, I'm sure.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all. We got to the range, and he was only there for a couple hours, thank God. And then we drove home and qualified, and that was it. Day 3 is our county tour, and this is when shit starts to get pretty gross.
Is this like training day kind of shit coming up?
Yeah, kind of. So we're in the car with two scenarios. It's me and two other recruits that were with me, who actually have both since left that department as well. One's now a firefighter. The other one's, I think, a community service officer somewhere else. And we're driving in a different part of town, in a different city, actually, because they're showing us where the court and jail is. And a car pulls up to us, and they notice that the driver and the passenger are both transgender. And they make a pretty gross comment about one of them. One in the passenger seat turns to the driver and said, and part of my use of the language, but said, "Dude, are those two trannies?" And they kind of giggle about it. And the vehicle made an illegal move where they turned right on a red to circumvent the red that we had, and like kind of looped back to get on the highway. And so they pulled him over immediately. They were super excited. I mean, it was 5 seconds after they notified him or saw him. Like, they were pretty excited to pull him over. They go and they run him, and they come back to the car, and they don't give him a ticket or anything, but they're laughing in the vehicle about how they use the birth assigned pronouns for each of them. So the driver, the female, they were calling dude and man, and the passenger, the male, they were calling miss and ma'am. And they were laughing about how funny it was. And I remember thinking, like, you went out of your way to stop somebody in a town we don't even work in simply to harass them. Like, if you like actually lay it out like that, you're thinking, what the fuck did I just watch? Like, what did I legit just watch? And I remember sitting in the back thinking, this is so gross, so gross. And actually, now that I think about it, there was another thing that happened shortly after that. Holy shit. I haven't unpacked this one either. You guys, sneak peek. My wife doesn't even know this. We, after that, are driving to go get burgers, and we stop at the burger spot, and they're playing music, and I think it was like Billy Joel or something. And I'm singing along because I'm like, whatever, like this, I'm eating a burger
Fucking
and I'm
Piano
listening
Man,
to
baby.
Billy Joel. Yeah. And
Like,
I
whatever, who
remember,
cares?
yeah, exactly. Like, it's just so minor. And I remember them making jokes about, like, oh, we found the, like, God, I can't remember what they said. It was something like, we found it wasn't the word sissy, but it was essentially insinuating that we found the sissy one of the recruits, of the three of us that
Jesus
were there.
Christ, man! Like, you can't even just enjoy music
Billy
and eat a
fucking Joel.
burger.
Billy fucking
Like,
Joel, yeah.
Fuck! It's such an alpha male dude bro environment. Like, this is day 2, and it's just like, be a fucking man and fucking make fun of trannies and fucking don't sing and testosterone. Jesus
Exactly.
fucking Christ, man.
Yeah, it was fucking bananas. So that was day 3. Day 4 is August 30th at this point. No, might have been August 31st. Yeah. And it's just our tech day. So we just get to meet with the tech analyst. She's a classified position, like, not really anything super heavy in law enforcement. She just teaches us like the system on the computers. And then we go to the local pound because that's where we're going to take animals for animal control. And we just get to like learn about how they volunteer and stuff and then go home. It was a pretty chill Thursday. And we get a 3-day weekend to decompress. And that Saturday, I proposed to my wife. And in my proposal, I'm such a shithead, cop at this point that I literally say to her, these are the exact words: I am going to be fighting crime and fighting bad guys, but that isn't half as scary as not having you in my life forever. And we have the video and I watch it back and I'm like, what? Who was like, yes, fucking preach, brother. Preach. Like, it was the goofiest
again,
shit.
Anybody who knows cops will know this, though. Like,
Yeah.
I've known cops. I work with an ex-cop. Like, there is a curve of behavior of right out of the academy. Again, it's straight out of fucking Hitler Youth, man. It is, you are gung ho all the way. You use the lingo. It's all you care about, and you live, breathe, and everything is about being a cop. And then you finally chill out. Only about 90% of your life is that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's day 6 technically as a sworn in officer. Day 7 is that Sunday, the 3rd. And, obviously don't do anything. Monday we go in and it's taser day. And we get to go in later in the afternoon because they want us all there at nighttime because we have the voluntary taser opportunity. And they make sure to tell us, hey, even the chief has been tased. So, you don't have to do it, but
So you got
you can.
voluntold.
Voluntold, exactly. And so we're doing the taser training, and the sergeant who's training us, he's showing us how to put the cartridge in the taser, and his hands are shaking. And he says, like, "Oh, I just haven't had enough coffee yet today." And I'm like,
Maybe you've
that
had
was
a
when
little
I
too much
first,
coffee, bro.
yeah, seriously. He's like holding a Starbucks cup. He's like, "I haven't had coffee today." I'm like, we call that a clue. That is not the truth. And so I remember that was the first part of me thinking, I don't know if I want to do this forever. Like, I saw his hands and was like, I don't want to have my hands do that 7 years from now. Like, that's scary.
Right.
And I was 25 at the time. And so I'm like, this is not what I want for my life. And so we do the tasing, and we've got it all recorded. I'll send it to you guys on Twitter so you can see it. So I'll send it to you guys in the DMs because there's faces of officers there. I'm like, I don't know what my rights are in California, says the former cop. But I'll send you guys a video. Yeah, exactly. It's funny because they said, if you don't make a sound, we'll buy you the nicest steak dinner in town. So I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I'll just take it and not say anything.
Like, your lungs aren't going to compress when you get electrocuted.
Yeah. And so they tape the barb. One barb gets taped to your shoulder. One goes in your boot. So they don't have to actually pull out the barbs. They just electrical tape it to you. And then they do it. And the whole, 5-second ride, I'm just saying, fuck that over and over again. It's me just going, fuck that, fuck that, fuck that, fuck that. And I watched it now and I'm like, there's probably some allegory of me being like, this is the state of policing. Fuck that. But so that's Monday, the taser. Tuesday is when I start to do ride-alongs with my first field training officer. And the day one incident that came up was I saw a vehicle that had a expired registration sticker. And I'm like, oh, look at me doing good cop work. Here we go. Hey, that guy's got an expired registration. And he says, well, did you see the driver? And I said, yeah, he was a Latino male. And he says, okay, let's go check Walmart and then the casino because that's the only place they'll be in this town. And
wow.
Yeah, I was like, what? Like, what? Did I really just
Apparently
hear that?
he knows the demographic. I'm just saying.
Yeah, like it shook me. I was
Jesus
like, that
Christ.
can't be right. Yeah, it was goofy as shit. And make it through the day. I remember eating lunch alone that day, away from all the other officers that were on duty, and just feeling like, this is not for me. And I go home and I tell my wife, like, this is not going great. And on the way home, I called my twin brother, and I was an actor in college. And I told him, man, I feel like I'm just playing cop as a job. And if I can just act my way through it, I'll be okay. I'll be able to survive this profession if I can just act my way through it. And I remember that conversation so vividly because I think back to it and I'm like, man, like my body physiologically already knew this was not right. And I go home, I wake up in the morning and I type up a resignation letter. And my grandmother texts me and she says, hey, typically with a job, it's really good to give 2 weeks notice. And I'm thinking, Grandma, I have a gun and badge. They don't want me to stay on for 2 fucking weeks. Like if I'm going to be leaving. And so I was like, if the day goes bad, I'm going to quit at 4 PM when I'm done. And it was pretty shitty all day. And the last call of the day was we were going to support some officers who were having some people clean out their vehicle because it was going to get towed. And we showed up and the cops are all laughing. And it was this young couple, probably in their early 20s. And they're cleaning out their vehicle on the side of the road, waiting for a tow truck. And one of the officers pulls up his phone and shows us a bunch of messages that he has from Tinder with the young lady that's cleaning out her car. And he's bragging about how good she was in bed and all of this stuff about, like, look at where she's at now, and just saying a ton of gross stuff about them as human beings, particularly human beings that, looking back, were probably using drugs as well. And he just said a bunch of really shitty things. And I remember thinking, like, I cannot become this. Like, I can't wake up 30 years from now and roll over and like not have my fiance next to me and not have my kids with me because I'm totally a shell of what I am as a human being. And so I went to my commander at the end of the day and turned everything in and decided to leave. And that was it. Day 10, Wednesday, September 6th of 2017.
I'm curious, how did that actually go? Like,
yeah, I want to hear the story of how that went down.
Yeah.
Like you walked in, they were like, "Oh, see you later, chap." Like I there's no way there wasn't a fucked up conversation there.
Yeah, for sure. So I put my stuff in my locker, everything other than my badge. I left like my service weapon locked up in there and stuff. And I went to one of the commanders that I felt particularly comfortable with. And I said, I gotta talk. And I closed the door and I said, I'm gonna be resigning effective immediately. And he was like, oh my goodness, what's going on? And I explained how I was feeling. And I was like, I just can't see myself doing this long term. And I don't want to lose like who I am. And he was like, if anybody else walks through that door and tells me that, I ask for their gun and badge and I tell them to leave. And he said, you're different. So I need to try and persuade you. And he was like, what's going on that's making you feel like this? And I couldn't really articulate it in the moment. I was probably
fucking nervous.
Yeah, I was pretty nervous, and I wasn't as like strong in my like my stances of certain things and the ways that I believed in the world. And so sure. I kind of passed the buck, to be honest. And if I could go back, I would have called everybody out. I would have put everybody on blast in that moment because I was gone anyways, right? Like I should have done it. And I just told him I can't do this. I can't lose who I am and lose my family because this isn't for me. And he said, well, I wish you the best. And whatever you do in life, you're going to be successful. And he said, that makes me feel a little bit better.
I'm shocked.
And I'm telling you, like, I think back to him and he was a commander. So he'd been around a long time and I'm sure he'd done some things that I would not agree with and not be happy with. But in that moment, I will say that he saw me as a human and I appreciated that. And he said, I do want you to go upstairs and tell our other commander who's up there. The chief's not here, but we'll tell him tomorrow. And so I went upstairs to the other commander. And this is that commander who originally asked me the question in the interview, what would you do if you were in a bar fight? And he said, what's going on? And I explained what's going on. And he said, wait, you're just quitting? You're giving up like that? And I was like, well, yeah, like I can't do this. It's not what I want to do. It's not who I want to be. And he was like, I think you're making an irrational decision because you're scared. And I was like, what? And he was like, I think you're scared of the job and you're not ready to do it. And that's why you're leaving. And I was like, that's not it.
I mean, but here's my thing. Like, let's just pretend he's right?
Yeah.
Let's just say like you're terrified of the job and you're, what did he say? What were his words again?
He said you're scared of the job and you're not ready to do it, basically.
Okay, cool. So let's just say that 100% this guy's an oracle, right? He stared into your eyes and he rubbed his fucking chi crystals and he saw into your soul and he was like, "Yes, he is scared of the job and he is not ready to do it." And that was the absolute fucking like quintessential truth of your soul. And that was accurate in every way. It was an indisputable fact of the universe. That's a really good reason to not do a job. Like,
Yeah.
if you walk into Burger King
Yeah.
and you're like, "I've been here a week and I am terrified of this job and I am not ready to do it," that's a good reason to quit that job. Like,
More than that,
Yeah.
if the job is being a cop and that is who you are, the last person I want as a cop is that fucking guy.
yeah, but that's what I'm saying. It's like in a job with zero stakes, if your job is marshmallow fluffer and you are terrified of the job and you are not ready to do it, that is a really good reason to quit. And that is a good
Yeah.
reason to accept a resignation. And now you're telling me the people who are in charge of like quote unquote protecting and serving, which clearly they don't, and pass out guns to dipshits can see that a guy is terrified and doesn't want his not cut out or ready to do the job, and they don't want him to leave. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like it's fucking insane. Like the rationale behind that, it's like clearly he did, like it was an insult. I mean, again, this kind of again, and now please jump in and correct me where I'm wrong because I'm making a lot of assumptions here. But this really it just feels like this is the kind of culture I'm fearing is what's behind the police station doors that we don't know about. It's almost like a bullying. It's almost like this is
Yes.
what we all fucking do, and if you're gonna be a little bitch, we're still not gonna let you go, but we're gonna call you a little bitch and we're gonna mock you and fucking berate you into conforming to what we want you to do.
1000%.
But here's the thing. I also think that they absolutely took it as a personal attack on them because,
Yes.
I mean, you've seen this too, Chris. I mean, we know cops. It isn't just a job to them. It's
Not even just being a cop, like any job. Like again, you're a marshmallow fluffer and someone walks in and you're like, "Dude, this is the cakiest job. I literally hang out and fluff marshmallows and they pay me $80K here. It's dope." And someone's like, "This job terrifies me and I'm not ready to cut out to do it." And you're just like, "What the fuck is wrong with you, dude? This job is dope." Like anybody would feel that, but then go ahead and imagine you're a fucking cop who has like made this their entire personality, right?
Well, that's just it. Like there's, I mean, and I'm sure you saw it, but there is a culture, and I've said this before, there is a culture of indoctrination that comes with becoming a cop. Like the ones that don't succeed, like yourself, don't want to be indoctrinated into it. Like that's the thing. And it gets even worse because I do, like I've said this before, like I do believe, I know one of them. I'm friends with a cop. I do believe he's a good guy. But I think being a police officer is also especially insidious because even if you are a good cop, let's say you're a cop that you stay in, you never commit a bad crime. Anytime you witness another cop doing it, you try to report them. You try to do the right thing by that. You do everything you can to work within the system to be the best cop you can be. You're going to be ostracized by everyone you work with. You're never going to get a promotion. You're never going to be looked at for leadership. Everyone's going to talk shit about you behind your back because you're not one of them. And here's the worst part. A lot of these guys, they can't fucking quit because where are they going to fucking go where they get the salary and benefits that they've been getting for working as a police officer for 20 fucking years? Like if you went in at 21 years old, you're 41. Like you're not even middle-aged yet. And you've built your life dependent on this salary. If you quit, where the fuck are you going to go? Especially if you've got a family and wife and kids. So it's like there is this job is built to either make you adapt or keep you there and being completely ostracized and miserable with no chance of getting out.
Yes. Matt, you described literally a colleague of my wife when she was a teacher, her husband's exact experience. He's a cop in a very, very small town, and he spoke out about some bad things. They wrote him up for every single thing he did moving forward. He has been ostracized by almost every department in the county now, so he can't leave. He is consistently given the worst schedule, and he cannot leave because they rely on health insurance and that salary. And he is stuck. And we just saw his wife a couple weeks ago, and she was saying, like, he is miserable. miserable. And my only hope is that the guys that feel like that somehow find a way to get out. I should, people, not guys, but anybody that's feeling like that in law enforcement has a way to get out, because I just don't want that. It's like you guys said at the start of the show, right? Like, you're either a good guy who gets out, or you're a good guy who stays in and becomes either ostracized or eventually down the road becomes part of the problem. And it's
because
scary as shit.
you can be a good guy your entire career, but if you turn a blind eye to the guys who aren't,
well,
still
even
complicit.
once. Well, here's
You're not a good guy.
Even once. Even all it takes is one time for you to just be like, fuck, I need to do this, but I really need that promotion coming up because my wife and kids, I got to put my kid through. Like, at that point, I don't think that guy thinks he's a bad guy, but he's just sold his soul to allow the bad guys to win. And it's like and of course that person on an individual basis, they're going to do whatever mental gymnastics they can to tell themselves that they're really a good person and they're not bad. But I think that's where positions like ACAB come from. It's because eventually it gets to the point where you can't say that. If you are participating in the system and you are aware of what the system is doing and you do nothing, you are just as guilty of helping that system as the guys that are actually committing the crimes.
Yeah, well, it's like being a professional baseball player, right? Like, okay, so you play for the Dodgers, right? And every single time the Dodgers hop on the bus and go into a new town, not all of them, only like a third of the team goes out and pops into the local bar and murders and rapes everyone inside. Now, there was a minority of you actually doing that. But if every single time that happens, everyone gets on the bus and like, I didn't fucking see anything. Oh, that guy had it coming. Oh, he tried to rape you first. Like, every time that happens, sure, maybe you don't have any blood on your hands, but it's like if you have gone to city after city after city and covering for guys or turning a blind eye, and you don't leave the team, and you're like, yeah, but the team pays me a lot of money. It's like, I hear that, and here's the thing, and I get it. I get how like losing a livelihood has got to be terrifying, because let's face it, being a cop, even small town, big town, it usually pays pretty decently. It is not shit wages, which here's the thing. I'm actually okay with that. I'm okay with cops being paid enough where petty bribes don't count and aren't important. Like, I am okay with a cop not having to worry about paying his power bill. Like, I am totally at peace with that. Like, you want your public servants, especially those who are armed, to be living a life where somebody can't throw them $100 to do something stupid. Like, that's a good thing. The problem is, it then sets up this lifestyle. Well, I got a mortgage and I got kids and I got this. What am I going to do? It's like, well, that's not my fucking problem. Like, I'm really sorry that you joined the roving rape squad, but like, figure it out. And maybe you have to have a smaller house. Maybe you have to rearrange your budget. Maybe you need to figure out.
Maybe you got to get rid of the boat and the new car and
then maybe you're going to go to trade school and become an electrician. Maybe you'll be a plumber. I don't know. Figure it the fuck out. But like, again, I don't care how much the Dodgers are paying you. If you're constantly riding the Dodger bus that ends up being the murder rape squad and you just go along with it, you're not one of the good ones. That's why there are no good ones, because the whole fucking team is complicit. If you continue to hop on that bus and say, I'm one of them, then you're one of them. Like, if you want to toss your fucking hat in with them, then you toss your fucking hat in with them. And so if you say, well, I don't do that shit, but I'm a cop, and it's like, cool, but then you're a cop and I'm holding you accountable to what other cops do.
Yeah.
Yep.
In for a penny, in for a pound.
Yeah. And again, it's not like cops don't know this is going on. Like, cops know what's fucking happening in the world. They're not fucking stupid. They're not on social media. They don't not have smartphones. Like, cops know what's happening in the world because they're the ones who've been actively covering it up. Now, white middle class people are starting to catch on to what cops have been doing. The cops have known it the whole time. And I mean, again, I got to tell you, like, stories I have heard from cops who were voluntarily not trying to tell stories about the horrors they've done have been horrifying. Cops, when they think they're being the good guys, can be horrifying.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't like, oh, we went out and shot people for fun. Ha ha. Like, no, none of that shit. But it's like, again, kind of like you're pulling people over and harassing trans people because they were trans and utilizing that state authority to do that. I don't think there's many cops who haven't participated in that one way or the other, whether they're the instigator or just the guy who didn't say anything while they were riding shotgun, like because they were a fucking P1, whatever. Like, it doesn't matter where you're at on that list. You're part of it. And if you don't at some point say, I'm not going to play this fucking game anymore, well, then you're in the game and you don't get to say I'm one of the good ones, because you're not. Because if you're still receiving a paycheck, you're not one of the good ones. The good ones aren't receiving a paycheck anymore.
Yeah, it was pretty eye opening. Just those short 10 days. I mean, that's yeah.
Now, what about the fallout afterwards?
Yeah,
so I got two questions. First of all, I want to hear fallout from like dealing with the cops who are pissed at you in your town because of it. But before that, what was the fallout for your family? Like, financially? Like, I mean, you got a wife now. Yeah. You just quit your fucking decent paying job, who I'm guessing you left another job to join. Yeah. Like, so how did you go from that, like, that excuse we always hear of, I can't afford to not be one at this point? Like, how did you make that? What did you do to make ends meet?
I was really blessed, I guess is the word. And I had received a wrongful death lawsuit from my grandmother passing away from mesothelioma, which is asbestos-caused lung cancer.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like actually the focal point of our podcast. It was $600,000. And so I lived off part of that while I became a substitute teacher, because my wife was a teacher, my twin brother is a teacher, and I started substitute teaching and then went into a teaching credential and master's program and eventually did that. With my family, the fallout emotionally was much more damaging. My wife grew up in a pretty not unstable household, but they moved often and there wasn't a lot of stability with a home. And so she finally had kind of felt like, this is going to be my husband. We're going to have this home. We're going to be safe. And I went home and was like, hey, I'm not going back. And so there's a lot for us to kind of unpack as a couple there of like, what does that actually look like? And she was wonderful in letting me talk about it. But even still 5 years later, there's things that come up that I'm like, hey, this actually happened. And I want to talk about this really quick because I'm starting to hear about it, or I'm starting to think about it a little bit. So that was one of the big fallouts. The town itself, my wife always mentions, hey, maybe we should move there. And I tell her, like, I'll never move there. Knowing the officers that are in the town, the 10 days that I was there, like, you couldn't pay me.
Well, and them knowing you.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Yeah, them knowing me. The recruits that were going through with me, they heard about me leaving about an hour later because the commander who kind of talked down to me sent out an email and said, hey, this recruit's no longer going to be with us. So they texted me and asked what was going on. And I explained to them how I was feeling. One of them left a couple weeks later and is now doing a different job. He's firefighting. And the other one left about another month after that, and he's in another department, I think in the East Bay maybe. Coincidentally, the department that we worked for was a dual department. So it was police officers, and then about a year, once you're on the force, they send you to the firefighter academy, and you're a dual department. So you sign up for your shifts, for your rotation. Okay, for 6 months you're in the firehouse, or for 6 months you're a cop. So the one who left to be a firefighter, he was already trained to do that. He was pretty well prepared for that, and I'm glad he's there. But they lost a recruit in the class before us as well, and a recruit in the class after us. So the psychologist who did all the testing for them called us and asked, hey, the department is kind of hounding me for picking the wrong guys. And I just need to know for my own business, was it what do you think? And I told him
what
straight
went
up.
Wrong?
He's the only person I told straight up, like, no, it's the department. Like, they're not great, and they've got some problems. And so he thanked me. About a year after that, one of my closest friends from high school, his older brother was killed by the town. The police showed up to him when he was having, I think, some type of mental health issue.
Crisis.
Crisis at one of the hotels there in town. And they tased him a couple of times. And I think he had a heart attack and passed away. And I think, like, hearing that and talking to my friend on the phone about it afterwards really kind of put into perspective, like, man, I could have been there in that department with those guys when that happened to his brother. And I would have felt so guilty. I mean, I knew his brother. Like, it wasn't like it was just his older brother. I knew him. We had played basketball together. We were friends. And so for that to happen just a short while after I left, it really like emotionally made me kind of beat up about it. And so I haven't really unpacked a lot of it. And that's kind of what spawned the Twitter thread the other day after the Uvalde shooting and the cowardice of the police there. Knowing what I was trained in the academy to do with like active shooter situations, I couldn't be silent anymore about like my experience as a cop. So I decided to share it. And then it, it led me to you guys.
Well, now,
Well, thank you.
and that's a question I also have though. Is so in the aftermath of the Texas school shooting, like, where does that comply with the training you received? And like, okay, so first of all, like, did they move like where you're like, oh no, they totally fucked up and they were supposed to charge in and they didn't, or was it no, that's exactly what they were supposed to do because of their training? Not whether or not that was morally correct, but like, was that in training? And then also, like, did what happened surprise you at all?
You're totally right. Like that is not what you're trained. We have a video scenario in the academy, so you're not like an actual acting scenario. You're looking at a screen and instructors behind you kind of changing what happens on the screen. But it's an active shooter situation in a school, and you're looking down a hallway at a school that's like an indoor school, and thousands of kids just start running. I should say hundreds, not thousands. Hundreds of kids just start running at you, and you are supposed to go into the hallway with your Glock 9 and clear this hallway and find this active shooter with a rifle and an assault style rifle. And that was what we were all told. Like you signed up for this. You're going into that building. You're going into that school. So to hear the way that it's been spun since is like absolutely gross, because like how do you justify that? Again, not even just morally. Like morally, like you had a duty to respond, but like for your training, you were supposed to go in there. So it made no sense to me. I think that's probably why I felt the need to kind of speak out, because I wanted the people that follow me on Twitter to know that like I'm not just some teacher spewing a bunch of shit. Like I'm somebody that had gone through an academy that was prepared to do this as a job, and I have a unique perspective on some of the issues in policing, and particularly in arming teachers and the narrative around school shootings. But yeah, they were totally off base, totally wrong with that.
So in your opinion, as someone who has been like, who's gone through police training and did all this, and again, signed up for the right reasons, like, tell me where they went wrong and what should have been done. So like, what did they fuck up on? And like, let's say you were the you were the fucking, commander on scene. What would you have done differently? What should they have done?
I would be sending every single officer that has a weapon into the building. That's what I would have done. Like we did building clearing, scenarios just like that. Like you're not waiting for a tactical team. You should have had enough training to at least engage an 18-year-old in gunfire to potentially save kids. Like yes, your life was going to be at danger. Yes, you might have been hurt or died. But if you signed up, you're getting the hero's celebration of he laid down or she laid down their life and these beautiful 10-year-olds survived. And because of their failure to act, kids were slaughtered. Like it doesn't even like process to me when I think about that, thinking through the training I had to go through. Now you guys talked in your episode with Stauffy. I mean, I heard his academy was like 12 fucking weeks or something, or like
something like that. It was
yeah,
very
I was
short
like,
period of time.
Yeah, I'm like, oh my God, like I couldn't even imagine that. Like 20 weeks, was like a long time, and you're ingrained in the idea of like you're going in.
20 weeks isn't even that long. It's 5 months.
No, it's really not.
And you said a week of that wasn't even actual training. Like, so
Yeah.
19 weeks, 4 months, 3 weeks. Here's your gun. Good luck.
Yeah.
Like
Seriously.
that boggles my fucking mind. And then you go and you talk about people like Stauffy who had significant less training than that even. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
You become an EMT and you've got to have 6 months worth of training.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like how long do you got to go to school to be a fucking teacher? Like years.
Yeah, my credential program was like 18 months after my bachelor's degree. Yeah.
After you'd already finished a degree.
Yeah.
I used to be a phlebotomist. To become a phlebotomist, I had to go to school for a year, and then I had to do my externship, and then to get licensed federally, I had to be working for 6 months without incident. Like, just to be able to stick a small needle in a vein and get a little bit of blood for testing. That was my requirement.
Yeah, my goal is to be a social worker. I have finished my bachelor's is done. I'm now hoping to get into a master's program. That's going to take 2 years. It's going to be like a year internship. And this is to not have half the responsibility a police officer has.
Yeah.
Hey, I read the
It's
pamphlet
wild.
and got my driver's license, okay?
Yeah, it's bananas. And so the response from the officers at the Uvalde shooting is just wildly wrong. Wildly
It's
wrong.
deplorable
And then,
is what it is.
yeah. And then you see the videos of the way they were treating the parents. And they're, this pseudo hardo thing of like, well, we had to secure the area. It's like you weren't doing anything inside anyways. There's a story of a mom running in there and getting her kids because you weren't doing anything. Like it's just a massive, massive failure. And then the narrative after it is even more gross.
Yeah.
Oh, they're working hard to cover it up now. I mean, they've
Oh,
stopped
yeah.
cooperating with federal investigators. Like they're locking down tight. Not just the police department, the fucking school board too. None of them want to cooperate with this because they all come out looking bad. All of them.
Yep. 1000%.
And it goes to show like what is going on here, right? Like it goes to show exactly what we're looking at with these guys and and again, not individuals, talking about the departments as a whole. What is policing for? Because again, I think a lot of people go into it because they're like, fuck yeah, I'm going to fucking get, bank robbers and I'm going to stop murderers and killers and I'm going to protect my fucking community from the worst people. And it ends up coming down that like, no, that's not what police departments do. They protect private property and they protect the status quo. They keep social order, and it's like, what were these cops doing at the school shooting? It's like, well, they staged, they secured the area. And that's all they did because social order and the status quo is all that matters. And then as soon as anybody was like, hey, kids are getting murdered, we're going to go put a stop to that. Those people were met with violence. Those people were beaten into. I mean, there's the video of the guy sitting there with a fucking AR-15 on his chest and a fucking taser in his hand ready to fight the parents. And it's like, the fuck was that guy not doing in the school?
Yeah, seriously. Against an untrained 18-year-old. Like,
Yeah.
I get it if you're like, oh, shit, this is, a former military operative that's in there lighting the place up. Like, this.
Here's the thing.
knew
You
who
know
was
what? If there's
inside.
some
Those guys are
fucking-
never the ones that shoot, to be
No,
honest.
here's the thing.
Isn't that strange?
But let's just say we've got fucking Sergeant Big Dick Saw, who's got a fucking 30 cal and he's shooting up the school and he's murdering. I got to tell you, I had a pocket knife. I'd go in. I'm not saying I'd win. I would probably super, super die. But like, I would give a shit enough to give it a try. I don't know. Maybe my tubby ass can sneak up on him and get him in the kidney or something, right?
You
And it's
are
like-
a ninja, by the way.
I am discreet and subtle. But like, that's the
Also,
thing, though. is
let's
like,
keep in mind though, like just as a reminder to everyone, these fuckers literally had a drill on this very scenario 2 months before this
2
shit went
months
down,
prior.
where they
2 months.
passed. Like they were drilled and inspected on how to handle this exact scenario, and they were given a pass on their handling in the drill. And then 2 months later, it fucking happens. And apparently, everything that they learned or that they were supposed to do, fucking just forgot.
well, and again, like cops are given military equipment, and I'm talking like, UMPs, I'm talking fucking tanks, we're not talking about, the Defense Authorization Act for that was supposed to be for things like desks and pencils and shit. And it ended up, Bush made it weapons after 9/11. And so cops have fucking drones and fucking rocket launchers and fucking massive amounts of tear gas and fucking,
Any
automatic
military surplus can be purchased.
massive military surplus weapons. And the point of that was to equip them to deal with acts of terrorism, foreign and domestic, on our soil. Like, that was the point of it, was that like, hey, and again, that happened here in LA, in Southern California. We actually had, there's a very famous, called the North Hollywood Shootout. And I'll bet most cops across the country have heard of this. And it's basically, and this is one of those times where like, the cops were trying to do the right thing. You had a couple guys who were just fucking head to toe comic book Iron Man body armor. Like, they were looking like Iron Man out of the cave.
It was level 3 body armor, head to toe,
Yeah.
literally.
And so they're fucking up there with fucking fully auto M16s, not ARs. They had M16s shooting 5.56. They had massive drum magazines, right? And these guys are, I mean, it's straight out of a superhero movie. Like, these guys are just lighting the fucking place up with machine gun fire. And the cops show up and they've all got fucking Beretta 9s and class 1 vests. And it was like they were just so ridiculously outgunned that because of this, the LAPD started putting AR-15s in squad cars. And that went around the country a lot. We have SWAT teams because the Black Panthers exist. Again, Bush expands military weapons to police departments to protect against acts of terrorism, which, let's face it, mass shootings are domestic terrorism. And we all agree on that one, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's what this is for, And what do we ever see it used on? We never see this equipment being used on domestic terrorists. We constantly see it being used on the body politic. All we see is the New York Police Department running people over with armored vehicles. And we see the LAPD launching revolving tear gas launchers at fucking crowds. And we see fucking Albuquerque Police Department using fucking MP4s to shoot homeless people. Like, all we ever see is this military equipment being used to contain, harass, murder, or maintain authority over crowds or unsavory individuals. And every single time we get to a place where a cop might be hurt, all of a sudden now it's time to stop and pause. When it's a situation where the cop can overcome instantly with massive amounts of force and violence, it's always applied. And anytime that might not be overwhelming force on the side of the police department, the policy is always stop and evaluate.
Yep. It's so weird too, because again, I know how our minds were in the academy. We would have lived for the opportunity to neutralize a threat, right? Like, that was like,
you want to charge them to be
buzzword.
big damn heroes, right? That was the point.
Exactly. And so you're thinking, like, that's these dinglings. There's no way they didn't think the same. There's no way they didn't drink the same Kool-Aid. So why did that all just go out the window? Like, why was that not the response?
Well, and here's the thing: we get like there's a weird two sides to this coin too, because it's in this situation, the reason action was not taken, and we know this, like, this is clear, it's because they were terrified of getting shot, right?
Yeah.
But in so many of these cases where they fucking straight up murder black people, the go-to excuse is, he might have had a weapon and I was terrified of getting shot. So it's like, on one hand, we've got whole swaths of officers that are so terrified that they might be murdered that they're just straight up killing kids and people running away and people with Down syndrome or mental health issues. And on the other hand, we have a whole crew of cops that is so terrified of getting shot that they won't take action to save the most innocent people in our society that need the most fucking protection. The thing that people generally expect cops to be willing to sacrifice for, these guys couldn't do it because they were so fucking terrified.
The difference for me is perceived threat versus actual threat. Mm-hmm. The guy that they shoot in the street is a quote unquote perceived threat, and the kid with the AR is an actual threat.
I mean, it boils down to cowardice. I mean, that's what it is, one way or the other. It's cowardice. But it's also, and I think you highlighted this, Justin, it's also training. As just a normal citizen, my expectation is that a cop is going to be trained to de-escalate a situation. It should be, to my mind, when the cops show up, things are going to calm down and get better. But that's never how it happens. And now we know why, because from day one, you go into that academy and you are trained to escalate. You are trained that your life is what matters first, and anything you have to do to protect your life is legal under the law. And again, I think we might have one or two cops or ex-cops out there, but like, let's just be clear. Does this apply all across the board? No situation is going to be 100%. But I think we've learned as a society, especially now, that the vast majority of cases, this is it. This is how it works. So at the end of the day, does it really matter if this particular precinct doesn't work that way when the 15 surrounding precincts all do? No, I don't think so.
No,
not at all.
So, what's your takeaway from all this? Like, if you could sum up everything we talked about from your experiences and the school shooting and in general, just everything we've talked about. Like, if you could sum up your view, because again, the three of us can bitch all day long, and we will, and we do. But like,
Without stop.
we don't have the experience that you do. This, so like, how would you sum this up in several sentences? And what you
I
think the
think
problem with modern policing is in America?
I think it goes back actually to kind of what we were talking about a while ago, in that the cop will act when they recognize that they have all the power in the situation. And in that moment, they can dictate it to go left, right, or straight, whichever way they want, because they hold the power. They held the power in that traffic stop to use that type of language because those people didn't want a ticket. They held the power in the vehicle with me and told me that I was not a good recruit and they didn't want to work with me because he was already in the department. He was already vested. He knew he had the power in that situation. The power dynamic dictates everything in modern law enforcement. And that power and that drive for ego is not slowing down. And it's scary. It's really scary. And obviously, again, I'm a white dude. Like, I have not faced persecution by the police. Communities of color have seen this for decades, and they've felt it for decades. And so my only experience with it has been the 10 days that I was in there. I couldn't imagine living life like that under that power dynamic. That's really the issue, is that the power is so heavily one-sided that they get to act any type of way they want. It's just gross.
Yeah, well said, man. Well, you know, thank you for being on here. Now, if anybody wants to, again, if you like Justin, you like what he had to say, think he's got a good attitude and a sultry voice. And maybe you
Which he
also
does.
want to hear about how to
Thank you,
fucking
thank
manage your goddamn finances. Where can people interact with you and your podcast?
Yeah, you can listen to our podcast at Price of Avocado Toast on Instagram. My wife runs our Instagram account, and she's a rock star. The podcast, obviously, you can listen to anywhere you listen to podcasts. We talk about millennials and financial budgeting and all of that good advice. If you want to follow me on Twitter, they're certainly welcome to follow me on Twitter at jbrownwoods. You can see the
Sorry,
policing
what was
thread
that Twitter
there
handle?
that kind of at jbrownwoods.
I didn't
One more
hear you.
time.
All
What was
one
it?
word, no
I didn't hear you.
hyphens.
What was that again?
Oh, my Twitter handle is at jbrownwoods.
So it's at
Beautiful.
Jay Brownwoods. I think it's at Jay Brownwoods. What do you
Yeah,
think, Chris?
it's at
Now, is
Jay
that the
Brownwood.
letter J or JAY?
That's the letter J. Yeah, so J, brown like the color, woods like the forest.
Beautiful.
All
Now,
right.
what about that? What about that Instagram handle?
The Instagram is at Price of Avocado Toast.
Oh, sorry, my shoe
So
was barking.
Price
What was that?
at Price of Avocado Toast.
Beautiful. All right.
And then for all you guys out there, we will have links and ats in our description for this episode. So if you want to check out Justin and his delicious avocado toast, which is obviously why him and his wife are probably poor and starving, and can't buy a house
Yes.
because
Fucking millennials.
yeah,
Yep.
fucking A.
Can't afford anything, I swear.
Yeah.
But
Exactly.
yeah, please
exactly.
go check them out. Go listen to their cast. You might find something you absolutely love, guys. And Justin, thank you so much for being here, man. Like, this was huge. This was it's rare anybody gets to like get that kind of a backstory as to like when this shit doesn't go the way it normally does. Like, what's going on behind these closed doors that we don't get to see. So like, dude, that was huge. Thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. Bottom of our hearts.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for letting me come on. Honestly, like I haven't really been able to unpack a lot of it and kind of talk through it all. So to be able to sit and talk about it on Twitter and have the reaction that it got and the messages that I got from people who had experienced similar or who were just throwing me some support, and then to be able to talk about it with you guys has been really dignifying. So I really appreciate it. It's helped me on my journey already, and I'm looking forward to how it can help me moving forward. So thank you.
Awesome, man. And
Wonderful.
best of luck
Thank
to
you.
you guys on that one. So
Thank you.
everyone, please go check out Justin's stuff. You're going to like it. He's a good dude. And thanks for being here with us. I know this is a longer episode, but I think you're going to like it. I think this was a good one. I think it was worth it.
Oh, Stauffy. Thank you again, Stauffy.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. Like, cause like this all happened because Justin had his Twitter thread and we had Stauffy on the show. We've shouted him out a bunch of times, but he's always got our back and he's always shooting us lines on cool stories, cool things. And the only reason this happened is because Stauffy tagged us in this post and then Chris reached out to Justin and we made this happen. So, any other listeners, we appreciate that kind of feedback. I think we made no secret that, we do try to engage with you guys whenever we can. And we love hearing from you.
And to be fair, Justin fucked up. He answered the DMs, and so now
I'm stuck listening to your guys' podcast. I'm hooked. I'm like, oh my god, I'm going to be indoctrinated by these guys.
Yeah, now anytime there's an ACAB related topic, we're gonna make yo, you want to be on the show this week?
Exactly.
So welcome to being harassed.
Guys, I'm losing it though, man. Can we just next week talk about the politics of puppies and unicorns? Because fuck, I'm getting depressed.
Well, yeah, but this is an American podcast.
The empathy
if you want to go to Finland, go ahead. So anyway, thank you for being here with us, guys. We love you all, and it's a crazy fucked up world, and thanks for joining us with it. And please take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and remember, the revolution is you.